Okay, so whenever you'd like, you can call this meeting to order and then read the resolution here.
Hey, I'd like to call the JMRL Board Policy Committee meeting to order. I move that Mike Powers request to attend today's meeting of the JMRL Board remotely due to the distance between their principal residence and the meeting location be approved.
And then you call a vote.
I'm going to call for a vote. Aye.
Lovely. Interesting times we live in. Okay, so we've got a few things on the agenda today. I recommend we get started because we've only got about 45 minutes here. The first was the finalization of the 2.11, the Employees Code of Ethics, which, if you recall, we finished our discussion of at the last policy committee meeting. We're going to ask the board to do two things today, which is to remove policy 2.1, which was the Public Employees Code of Ethics based on City of Charlottesville handbook that no longer exists. And we're going to ask them to have a first reading of the revisions that we made to 2.11, the Library Employees Code of Ethics. At the same time, I'm going to show the board some revisions to the employee handbook, which incorporate some of the things that are in the City of Charlottesville's personnel manual, largely that Camille found by going through and comparing the two. So I don't believe that there was any outstanding issues there. I think we had agreed at our last meeting, we were ready to have the board read this, but we wanted to give some time, just a big issue in case anybody wanted to think about it.
Yeah, we sent it back to the JMRL populace to make certain that everything was in alignment with the understanding.
Right. So any other discussion about that potential policy? I think we pretty well worked it through. Okay.
None here.
Is that you, Mike?
I was just saying none. That was also a test of the audio because the connection seemed to improve a lot. So I stuck with the with this computer connection.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
I think it's working better now.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for taking that effort. But since you are having a little bit of trouble, I'll go ahead and lead our way through the agenda. Is that all right with you?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay, so next up is a discussion of JMRL's policy 5.1, which was meeting and conference rooms. And I'm going to go ahead and share the fresh revision that we're kind of working on and just give the policy committee a little update. So 2 months ago, we discussed this policy. On the table then was a discussion about whether or not to make a fairly minor change to address a discrepancy in how procedurally different branches were handling checking out conference rooms, or to go back to the table and start the drawing board and start over. And the policy committee decided to send this back to be worked on again. So I brought this to JMRL's managers, put up a little working group of managers to discuss, came up with what we thought were the core things that needed to be in the policy. So these are board level, high level reasons, and then enough that the public knows where they need to go, basically what some basic rules are. And then we're also going to have to rewrite procedures for every branch because they all have little idiosyncrasies over how their rooms can get used. So that work is ongoing and will likely take quite a bit longer than this policy. But at any rate, I think it's worth looking at here today. So we have an introductory discussion here. I saw a few comments from Mike and Martha on this, just basically saying, Mike feeling that we probably need to get into a little explanation about meeting versus conference rooms, and Martha wanting to make sure that that would cover the privacy pods. Green just got their brand new 2-person privacy pod.
A lot of what we had written here seemed to, talking about groups and things like that, and that with the privacy pod, they're private. Yeah. And so I didn't feel that there was enough sort of separation there, and it needed a little more definition.
I think the current policy, the existing policy, has a meeting room policy and then a conference room section tacked onto the end. The goal here was to try to weave those things together, and generally a privacy pod will be treated as a conference room. But if that's not spelled out, then we need to spell it out.
Or we need to call it an individual conference room. We do say in here something about a certain number of individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 or more people.
That's what the, yeah, individuals with small groups.
So we welcome groups to use the meeting rooms, and then individuals in small groups to use the conference rooms, including privacy pods. So maybe small groups needs the clarification. That varies a bit though, because in most places it's 2 to 3 people max, but there's one here that has up to 6, I think. You know, so it's a small group because they don't need this whole space, but it's more than just 2 people. So that's more of a, like, that would get addressed procedurally here. So how do we figure out how to tell people?
Is the privacy pod an individual privacy pod?
It depends. At Louisa, it's only got room for 1 person. It looks like a phone booth. The new one at Green is designed for 2 people, but you couldn't
okay.
put more than 2 people.
So David, what about I was interested in just a little more of an just an intro paragraph that just, hey, JMRL offers these types of facilities for these purposes, you know, and list a few words about what the purposes are. The facilities include conference rooms, meeting rooms, and privacy pods, you know, and just introduce the idea that each of those have a different definition and a different characteristic without necessarily at the intro, you know, trying to define every one, but just signaling the idea that there's different levels of access, you know, there's different facilities for different purposes that have different sizes and different requirements. I thought that was sort of the general approach. And I confess I'm not looking at the wording just because of a technical limitation right now. Yeah, I wonder if sort of just a general heads up, hey, here there are some different facilities, and just be aware there's that different parameters apply to each one of them. If that could go a long way to just sort of sorting out, you know, giving people context that they're not that whatever we're talking about may or may not apply to your specific facility that you're interacting with.
Okay, so kind of, you know, I think that that's not far off from what we were trying to do here, but clearly
Yeah.
it didn't land. If I've got 2 folks saying like, yeah, that didn't come through. So so that all sounds fine.
Maybe putting in there, JMRL offers 3 different types of meeting facility. And then going into the description.
Yeah, that could work. Jefferson Madison Regional Library offers 3 options for members of the public seeking
Meeting facilities.
meeting facilities. But I don't know, Mike, did you want to wordsmith this now, or
I might. Well, I'm doing a fly, but just my reaction to what you just read might be something you might just broaden that to various facilities, which vary by branch. So again, I'm not walking into Scottsville and saying, hey, where's the such and such, you know, the privacy pod or whatever. But no, I don't imagine we're gonna get a fully wordsmithed product today anyways. I think our goal is just to move the ball, get some initial reaction from all the committee members, and put us in position for a final, you know, an offline final wordsmithing, and then have a kind of a final draft.
So let me make sure I'm capturing what it is that the clarification that because this is, I think, a good example of where staff spent so much time dealing with meeting rooms and knowing exactly what's there, that coming from the outside, it's good for you all to say to us like, oh, hey, that doesn't make sense. Because in my mind, it's like, oh, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm still unclear. You and I have discussed it several times. I'm still unclear which one is the meeting room and which one is the conference room. I got the idea.
Okay. So basically, a broad statement that JMRL offers space, you know, private, not always private, but offers individual or group space, and that it varies by branch. And I think to Martha's point, it would be worth here pointing out, like, here's some of the things that you might see.
options.
to some of the
The different
options. Because even the privacy pod is different at Louisa than it is at Green. So if we get that into the welcoming paragraph there, then the other things that the working group felt were important for the welcoming paragraph were to say, these are available for use during the hours the library is open on equal terms to all groups in the community, regardless of beliefs and affiliations. They're intended to be used by the public for civic, cultural, and educational activities and for discussion of current public questions. That comes from our current policy. And then here are some guidelines for that. So this is kind of where we're trying to set here's why we offer them. And, here's what they're intended to be for. Is there anything missing from that or superfluous to it?
No, I thought that was good.
And then here's kind of the list of bullet points, either from the current policy, from other policies we looked at, or just from operational experience that managers felt we needed to get here. So now we can kind of go one by one and see what we're forgetting or what we need. Conduct policy applies in all meeting and conference rooms. I mean, that goes without saying because it applies in the buildings, but I think it's worth having there. Rooms are not intended for the conduct of daily business or regular office hours. Okay, so this is wording from the current policy. And the idea is that you don't want somebody, we're not going to say, there's some libraries that go as far as to say as you can't do anything in this meeting room that is a for-profit enterprise, in a conference room either. But if somebody comes in and they want to book a conference room because they're writing a novel, with the intent that they're going to sell it someday, we wouldn't tell them like, oh no, that's a for-profit enterprise you're doing there. It's more that it's not meant to become an office for somebody, a place of business. So if we had somebody that was there every day meeting with clients and customers, and we would have to have a conversation about how they're monopolizing the space and people who need it for the other uses listed above aren't getting the same access to it.
What if somebody wanted to set up a craft table of my crafts that I'm going to sell?
In the meeting rooms, no. There's specific language coming up about what you can sell.
Oh, okay.
Do you think
David, I'll just,
in that first one, because it says meetings and conference rooms and it doesn't say privacy pods, we just have a broader thing at the end rather than specifically saying meeting and conference room? Do you know what I'm
The
saying?
conduct policy one?
Yeah.
It could be all meeting facilities.
Yeah. That's,
All meeting spaces.
yeah. Facility spaces.
And that covers whatever comes down the pipe. Yeah.
Okay. Mike, did you have a thought about this daily business or regular?
well, I'll just observe that you, in my mind, kind of conflated two issues. There was the purpose of somebody using it for business, but then you kind of segued into, we don't want that on a frequency basis to monopolize and prevent other people from using the uses. And to me, the second, those are separate. So I think we wouldn't want anyone to monopolize the room for any purpose, whether it's the best charity in the world or not. And I think that's a little bit separate from the idea that just using it as a business would be necessarily, monopolistic in some worse way. So just an observation. I think to me, the issue that you were raising would be better addressed with frequency limits, whether that's procedural or policy, and not as much strictly on the purpose aspect.
Yeah, that gets kind of sticky.
Yeah.
Because like staff, it puts the burden on, like, I guess, the staff to keep track of frequency, plus you could have someone that's meeting every whatever at Gordon, and then when they can't get it at Gordon, they come to Central or they go to North, I can see that being we've never really.
But the best charity in the world could do all of those things as well, just as well as a business could do.
So I introduced that notion of frequency, and maybe this is not the place to discuss it. It was not in this language here, which simply says rooms are not intended for the conduct of daily business or regular office hours.
Yeah, I think I have no problem with that. I think it sounds fine. I'm just pointing out that still doesn't solve the issue.
Understood. That's
Yeah.
two separate things. So we'll put a pin in that. Do we need to talk about that here? Okay, all meeting room events. So this is another case where, we're being very specific here. And we're talking about meeting rooms, not conference rooms or privacy pods. And maybe we need to spell that out. But here, all meeting room events must be free and open to the public. No individual may be turned away from a meeting room, nor can meeting organizers require an individual to provide any identifying information as a prerequisite for attending. Only JMRL's conference rooms are available for private use. And privacy pods. So maybe that covers that.
And let me just ask you, in practice, what I just heard, age limits would not be any part of what you just described. So I've heard of libraries where adults wanted to attend a juvenile or a children's event and were turned away and said, hey, this is a children's event. You're not eligible today for this particular meeting. I just want to make sure that it's not, from what you just read, that's something we would not do. And I want to just get that on the table and see if we're in agreement on that.
I think that in my mind, what we're talking about here is public use of the meeting rooms. So you brought up a good point, because it says all meeting room events must be free and open to the public. But certainly we have library programs in which we limit for any given reasons. We limit for space due to the materials that are required. We limit for, for whatever it might be. So in my mind, library usage of the meeting rooms is exempt from that statement.
Okay, so
we need to clarify.
You probably, I'm just thinking ahead where somebody says, oh, I wanted to attend this, but for this library use meeting, and I was turned away, and your policy, it conflicts with your policy. So I would want to kind of be proactive about making that clear. But I'm also observing that for public use, the example I gave would be something we wouldn't allow somebody, a public user, a non-library use, to set up age limits on their event, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Outside of the library's safe child policy, we wouldn't allow a parent to drop off a 9-year-old,
right,
regardless of what it is, and leave them there. So as long as it's not in violation of any other policy. But yes, if a member of the public wanted to have a children's only event and they booked the meeting room, it has to be open to anybody that shows up for it.
Okay.
One thing.
Well, that's what you read. So if that's what you mean, that's great.
Yeah, but this is a good point. And one thing that Haley had brought up when we were talking about this, was that one of the libraries that she looked at had a clause at the bottom, like we're going through a bulleted list here, Mike, and at the bottom it said something like library programs are exempt from these guidelines, like, not to say, you would want to word it so it doesn't be like, oh, those rules don't apply to us, but just in general, programs that the library needs the room for are a bit different than the public space. So that's one way to deal with it. The other way to deal with it is just more clarity here.
Or to define what public is. Public is not JMRL.
Yeah. So you mean like at the top of this thing, say the following guidelines apply to public use of JMRL meetings and conference rooms.
Someplace having what public is when we use it in documents such as this. I don't know whether or not that's becoming more complicated than what we want to do.
That's not a bad idea, but I think that we would want it to be self-sustaining in this document. So if somebody saw this document, they wouldn't then have to go find the other thing. So I think what I'm thinking is either something in this sentence, the following guidelines apply to public use, just to clarify library usage and programs are excluded from that, or try to work that into each bullet here, or something at the bottom of the bullets, say
Bottom of the bullet.
bottom of the bullets.
To refer people to the programming policy.
Yeah, put a little asterisk. Yeah.
So I'm just going to put a bullet at the very bottom that says, add a statement saying library programs and usage are exempt, some way to say that.
Like they're guided by our programming policy, look there for that.
But we could have library events, we could have the library using it for something that's not necessarily a program, the staff.
Yeah, we have certainly
Like,
done that, where like
you know,
this
like
meeting room.
Interview.
Interviews, committee meetings,
Board meetings?
packing up
Board meetings
comic
are
books
lovely.
or remaindered books, yeah. There's a lot of workspace use of library meeting rooms sometimes.
So I think just staff usage. Okay, we can get some good, we can get some language. Haley had presented some language from, I think it was Henrico. We can go take a look at it. I didn't like it. I thought it was too, the language made it seem like. It's too complicated.
Yes, right.
And so we want to avoid that. We're not holding public meetings or things needed to run the library.
Did we also want to add something about privacy pods in there?
Yeah, I think I added while we were talking. Only
And
general
pods
instructions
and privacy
pods,
others, yeah.
so- Private issue. Did we, Mike, did we lose you? I just don't hear.
No,
you.
I'm here.
Just checking.
Don't hear me breathing.
Yeah.
A rare lull.
Okay, solicitation. So this is one that comes up. And people get asked about. So solicitation is not permitted at JMRL, including in meeting or conference rooms. However, local offices of voter registration and or their designees may use library facilities to encourage voter registration. So staff felt that this was important. We do get, we have people, they use this outside of the meeting room setting too. I'm not sure what the conduct policy says about solicitation, but like, this is something that gets pointed to for people wanting to sell things or wanting to hand out flyers or to sticker things or
Have people sign petitions.
signing petitions, yeah, things like that. So any issues, questions? All right. This next one is largely what we've got now. Meeting, conference rooms, and privacy pods. I guess all of these are the same. Meeting, rooms, spaces. I mean, do we want to call them meeting spaces and then all three of them meeting spaces are defined as?
I mean, you could spell it out each time, or you could just say meeting spaces.
Sometimes it's one person in there, right?
Yeah.
This is part of the confusion.
I would say keep it with all of the words in there.
Spell it out.
Yeah. Because I'm looking for the meeting space.
I think you're right. Conference rooms and privacy pods. Okay. Are not available for programs involving the sale, advertising, or promotion of commercial products or services, regardless of purpose, except programs of JMRL, Friends of JMRL, the Virginia Library Association, the Virginia Festival of the Book, or the JMRL Library Board of Trustees, at which programs performers, presenters are permitted to sell sound recordings, videos, and books related to their performance presentation. Library staff shall not be involved in such sale in any fashion. That's the current setup. Works well now. Questions?
No.
Okay. This also is in the current policy. Meetings or classes held in library meeting rooms must be open to the public free of charge. Fees to cover only the cost of materials and supplies may be charged by publicly funded institutions and accredited educational facilities. This one is a little dicey to me.
I think this is hard to enforce in
Yes.
real world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, homeschool groups or
Yeah.
study
Mhm.
groups or, somebody offering a class for homeschoolers, but is that an accredited educational?
Yeah, who's
person?
doing the accrediting?
Right. Is the purpose of this to make an exception so that people can charge for the cost of materials and supplies in these cases?
I'm not sure what the original purpose of this was.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how often it is even,
I don't know how often it comes up. It would be like somebody doing a
would be
training or a course that's open to the public, but they say, hey, there's a booklet that comes along and the booklet costs $30.
we generally discourage. It's a
Yeah. I mean, I think that you could still make the program open to the public, but that they couldn't leave with the booklet.
Force somebody to pay for the booklet in order to attend. They
Right.
can attend, but it's okay to offer the booklet at
Then you're
$5.
kind of opening it up to selling stuff.
Right.
Like say you have some sort of like MLM, business or whatnot, like I'm having a program about how to do this business. And if you buy this while you're here, then you can, we certainly don't want that because that's private enterprise, basically.
I mean, I will toss into the ring for this part of the discussion. For our programs, authors are allowed to sell copies of their books, or I should say presenters are allowed to sell things that are associated with that program. But I don't know where the underlying principle is that we were trying to make a distinction of. I mean, in some sense, the programs are pre-approved by the library or are selected by the library. I suppose that's certainly a difference.
Yeah, I think it's an incentive to provide quality programming for some presenters, specifically authors and author talks. And this is the type of thing where, I don't want to jump out on a limb here, but like library staff generally would try to work with somebody who was interested in doing something like that they can fill out the program partnership form and we can make a judgment over whether or not that would be
Right.
a partner program. And at that point, they would be allowed to sell.
Yeah. I wonder if that's worth a note in this area or not really.
Maybe in the one before.
Essentially covered in the one before. That if somebody wants to come in, maybe a statement that if somebody wants to come in, here's the link to the application for making the partnership. And then it falls underneath all this other stuff.
So maybe adding a program partnership link, that makes sense to me. But what about this specific sentence here? This has been here as long as I can remember. I can't remember ever being asked about this. Kristen, can you remember?
It came up recently where a guy wanted to offer something and he said he used to do it through PVCC
Yeah.
and that he wanted to do it at JMRL, and we just kept asking him enough questions, and I think you dealt with him too, that he just gave up. It was
kind of financial.
It was a financial thing.
Financial plan.
Yeah.
I did a seminar on
Yeah.
financial plan.
Yeah.
But
But
in that case, he wouldn't have been from a publicly funded
Well,
institution.
he said he was accredited or something about
Yeah.
PVCC at the time. I think that this has worked for us for the past how many years? So it's something that we can point to when we have people that want to do some sort of a sales presentation in the rooms.
And is it limiting the public's use? Is there a group that would use the room that's not able to? For the purposes laid out above, for the civic, cultural, engagement, and educational activities, for the discussion of current current public questions. They can't use it because we put this in there.
I don't think so. I'm thinking about like literacy volunteers,
Yeah.
if they have something. I know the Sierra Club sometimes will try to sell their calendars in the room, and I have to tell them, no, you can't sell your calendars in the room.
Which is fine. You've got other avenues. for that.
Exactly,
That's not
exactly.
preventing the
Right,
program.
from happening, right? We just have to remind groups
I
sometimes.
guess I'm thinking more of like, okay, the Cars wants to do a first aid training or something. They've got some sort of plan or something.
That's just all, it's all been free. Like I'm thinking about the person who's doing the Narcan training,
Yeah.
and they're gonna hand it out. I think generally those are all free. They're
So they're not charging anybody for those. So that's not.
Wouldn't this also be wouldn't the person have to Is there an application that they have to make similar to the program's application?
To use the room? Yeah, there's an application form.
So when they fill out the form, this, where there would be some sort of statement about, that's where the judgment would come.
I think when they fill out the form, we tell them like, they have to promise I abide by this policy.
Uh-huh.
So it's not as laid out in the form itself. I think there's just a sentence or two that says must be free and open to the public. Something like that.
And then we do, as a practice, hand the policy to them with the form,
Yeah.
and they're
first sign.
next to each other on the website too. I think, or they were.
And that's part of the screening when they call to sign up. You know, free and open to the public, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's the first thing that we
Okay.
say.
All right, so kind of what I'm hearing from staff is that this is working fine, leave it as is. I don't see any huge reason to pull it. It seems a little unclear to me, but seems okay. Let's leave it for now, because it seems like we're likely going to be talking about this again in August, maybe with some revisions. Okay. The fact that a group, and here's where Haley suggested, her wording was JMRL sponsored activities and events are not subject to the guidelines of this policy. That was her suggestion for the bottom of the,
At the bottom, yeah, because we already say in the previous one that we can sell stuff if it's a library thing.
well, her just in general to
Yeah.
kind of go with the questions that we
Is
had.
that the bullet at the very bottom?
Yeah, so that could be
Okay.
our. That was the one that I didn't love because I thought it was too.
If you have that in there, do you need the whole thing about who can sell?
Well, some of those are not, like the Festival of the Book, I think.
Even though we're partnering with festival? Oh, then we get into the whole partnership.
I like having those listed there because that's it.
Yeah.
We don't want
It's
anybody else
clear
really
just
selling
those.
stuff.
Okay.
It has worked well. And it has worked, I think, for staff too, to be very defined about here's what we can and can't allow. Okay, the fact that a group is permitted to use a room does not in any way constitute an endorsement of the group's policies or beliefs by the library. All literature and publicity regarding meeting room activities must clearly identify the sponsor. So this one comes up with some frequency where we'll see something out in the wild, out in the world, a flyer or
Or
whatnot. It might have JMRL's logo, or it says, come see us at the library, and it's some individual or group's event. It doesn't have anything to do with the library. So when that happens, generally we point to this and ask if it needs insurance, says who it is, or to take them down until they do something. I think that's pretty good as it is. All right, here's the one that people wanted to talk about the most. Rooms are not available for social gatherings such as birthday parties, reunions, showers, etc. This came up recently because we had a group. There was a longstanding, they had been using the room for, it was like a parent play group type thing. So they had the room, they put some toys out, and it was anybody who wanted to come in could come in. To Mike's point, anybody could come in and use the room. One of the kids had a birthday on that day and the parents had cake or whatnot. So there was discussion about like, oh, is that a social gathering or is it for this kind of educational time for kids? So I think that what we're leaning towards is that that's a fine use of the meeting room. Like if they were there for another purpose and happened to be celebrating something, like we got a cake today to say goodbye to Thomas and Wendy. Like that's still within the confines of our meeting room policy, I think.
But have they been using it with regular office hours?
They use it on Friday mornings as a play group. I think this comes up more often with like the one-offs. Like, so what happened is if someone saw that this was happening as part of the play group, they're like, oh, I want to have my kid's birthday party here too. And I want it for Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. And they come in with balloons and it's basically an invitation birthday party, like that they thought was okay.
And to Martha's point, I think the office hours one is really a privacy pod and conference room issue where it's like there's the insurance agent and they can have, one person. And this is free and open to the public. So since there's no limit to the space, the meeting room, only one other person can be in there. This, we're saying like, okay, this is this group using the room for that purpose. If it aligns with your purposes, help yourself. But in the conference room, we wouldn't let somebody in. they're not free and open to the public. Like if you booked a conference room, I'm not gonna let Camille come into your small session.
And just for your perspective, like, so we take bookings the first of the month for the fourth month out, right, Camille? And we do have groups, the Morris Men, the Dancing Queen, like there are different groups that they use the room on, this is the big meeting rooms because they're practicing their dances or they're doing yoga or they're doing whatever. So they use it on a regular basis, but it's free and open to the public. But like come the first of the month, they're calling us to make sure they
It's
got
on monthly.
Yeah.
And we did have some discussion about that. I think there are some staff that would be interested in limiting like having a smaller window of signups, you know, so it's not 4 months like that, or only there are some libraries that do, you know, frequency limits, like only twice a month or something like that.
And it's come up because sometimes we have a late opportunity to have a program and we don't have any space because this group booked it 3 months ago because this is their normal night to meet. And we have to beg and plead to be able to use the space in the room for this other program that would be a library program free and open to the public. So that's where it gets, if there's times when it would be nice to.
I think those usually get handled on an individual basis.
Yeah.
Like right now, there was a group that was supposed to be in here from 12 to 2, having a book club that we had to ask to use another meeting room, and we had to move another group that was in there to a smaller, so there was like a whole, it got
Domino,
handled basically administratively.
And, you know, being a member of the public and going to different events, it is nice to know a couple months in advance to be able to figure out your calendar.
Sure.
I think, Martha, you hit on something there, though, that maybe that's a distinction that wasn't clear, and do we need to think about it, which is that free and open to the public doesn't necessarily, doesn't mean conference and privacy pods, right? It has to be free. You can't be charging anybody for anything, but it's not open for other people. If it's a 2-person privacy pod, only 2 people can be in there. So do we need to clarify that language anywhere above?
In the beginning,
So here it says, oh, we did. Only JMRL's conference rooms and privacy pods are available for private use. I think that covers it. Okay, so any questions about birthday parties, reunions, showers?
all meeting room events must be in free.
But then at the bottom of that same paragraph, the last sentence, it says conference and privacy pods are available for private use.
I think it's just confusing because to us, meeting room is a clearly defined specific thing,
Yeah.
but not
think
to
that's
the
why
rest
here.
of the world.
So do you have a suggestion?
Would it be, so are you saying that if I book a conference room, that is not open to the public? Or it could be open to the public?
It's not.
Then shouldn't we say in there are available for private use, not public use, or somehow define right there that it's not free and open? That's not open.
Maybe if we just move that right under it. Can you see this? It's just big enough. So all meeting room events must be free and open to the public. Only JMRL's conference rooms and privacy pods are available for private use. Does that cover that?
But that doesn't say that they are private. It says they're available for it. So that also means that they could be public.
Could be.
Okay, so should we tweak that on JMRL's conference rooms
I mean,
and privacy
Can't,
pods?
can't they be public? People can't.
It could be like, oh, I'm gonna sit in here and I'm gonna recite, you know, the works of Robert Burns, and if anybody wants to come in, sit
Yeah.
with me one at a time.
They don't have to.
There
be
are
private.
scenarios.
And we have had people book the conference rooms for like, I don't know, open hours to come in and ask questions about your housing issues or whatever. So it's not private, it's booked by so-and-so and they'll be in there for this time period, but people can come in and go.
So that makes
And
me,
we want to leave that open,
makes me believe that that's the best, are available for private
Right.
use.
Yeah.
but not limited to that.
Okay. Then are you worried about moving that sentence down a little bit? Yeah, me too. Maybe it was better where it was. Oh, this is 3 separate bullets. Go back to the original order, but they're like clearly defined. Now,
I think that's good.
we could add no individuals may be turned away from a meeting room, not conference/privacy pods. I wish we could like color code them. Because people are just gonna see meeting room and think it applies to all of them. To your.
If we put a capital there, if all meeting rooms, meaning meeting room, a specific thing, capitalized, that would be that would denote that is what it is. And a privacy pod is,
A conference room and a privacy pod are different things. Yes.
I think that that's an elegant solution.
Elegant.
Call them big, medium, and little.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I like spaces or rooms better than facility, because facility sounds like there's some services and equipment that are,
Aren't there?
there are, but I don't want it to be like a hotel meeting facility where there's this expectation of, you know,
Like we
Water,
can
tea,
understand.
coffee.
Yeah.
yes, and that has come up. you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we do offer,
We do, but we also have a caveat that, you know, if it's not working, you can't, you know, sue us because it's free to use and we do the best we can. Exactly.
where is that category?
Sometimes the elevator.
That's
works
in
and
the
sometimes
meeting room
it's-
registration form, David. Which I did find on the new website.
Okay. Library sponsored events have first priority in scheduling. JMRL reserves the right to reschedule public meetings if a conflict with library events occurs. JMRL will make a good faith effort to make other arrangements for a public booking if a conflict arises.
That's good. Not this JMRL place.
This one comes up infrequently. The first part of it comes up sometimes. The second one, less frequently. Okay, for party reserving a meeting or conference room or privacy does not arrive within, may make the room available to other users. So if somebody doesn't arrive within 15 minutes, make it available to other users. When not in use, rooms may be available to individuals on a first come, first served basis. So I think this needs to say meeting rooms, right? Or no, is this all 3 of them?
Yeah, I think it's all of them.
Yeah. Okay, this is a lot of procedure.
It is.
Yeah.
Right? But we want this standard. I don't want this to be treated differently from branch to branch. I want people to have that same expectation.
It also seems like something as someone using the room you would want to know. Like if I don't get here within 15
Yeah.
minutes of my booking, it's
Yeah.
not like it's just mine for 3 hours and I can show up anytime.
Mike talks about the balance between, you know, that you want the high level things and then you also want the stuff that people need to know in order to use the service without getting too in detail. So I'm okay with keeping it even though it is a bit in the weeds. Okay, for meeting room bookings, meaning not privacy pods and not conference rooms, JMRL will publicly post the name of hosting organizations. So this is fairly new here. It used to be, we always had on the meeting room booking calendar, which is available online or on the ones that are posted in the branch, the name of every group that signed up to use the room and some contact information. So if you saw there that there was a sewing group or whatever it would be that you'd be interested in going to, you would know who to contact about it. Since that same system is what we've used to have the conference rooms and the privacy pods, up until a few months ago, they'd had everybody's information on there. Then there was a concern about whether or not we should be putting out people's contact information if they just wanted to use the privacy pod, which they're not there to share public information. So we started making those not available. They don't say the person's name, but we want to make sure that the groups do, because in theory, those are open and available to the public. So this is just kind of clarifying current procedure, but we want to let people know up front. If you're signing up to use a meeting room for some sort of public event, then
It will be public.
it will be public, and we will put up there, this is the, the sewing circle from,
Yep.
from, wherever it is. Okay,
If a person calls and says, I was supposed to meet with somebody, I think in the privacy pod, but I think I forgot what time it was. Would we divulge that name?
that's a great question. I don't think we've discussed it. My gut says no. We wouldn't, I don't know, I'd have to think about that one.
I think they would have to know the name. They would have to say,
Give
I'm
us
gonna
something.
meet with David Plunkett, but I forgot what time. Can you tell me,
Yeah.
what the booking is for?
Yeah, then we.
I don't think I would say, oh, we have so-and-so in the room at 3 and so-and-so at 4 and so-and-so at 5. So which one, I think, yeah.
Anything about confidentiality.
That's it, let me muddle that one.
Yeah, I think that's worth discussing to make
Yeah.
sure everybody, because certainly we give out, if the Sierra Club is in the Swanson room at 6 o'clock and somebody wants to know, or the Bent Theater, what time are they meeting? We can tell them that because they're in the large room and it's there. And we have a contact.
under this.
info,
That falls
yeah.
exactly under that clause, yeah. Okay, Tony's arrival means we need to start wrapping it up. Meeting room use requires completion of a meeting room registration form by an authorized group organization representative with a valid card. Individuals under 18 will need parental signatures on the form. Any juvenile use of conference or meeting rooms or
We'll clean that up.
privacy pods must comply with the same child policy.
Maybe everywhere is saying all three.
It should all be meeting, and conference rooms.
We'll go back and clean it up. I just want to get it in here so we understand the intention now. All right, okay, are only available during library hours unless by special arrangement with the library director or their designee. Any after hours usage of rooms may require a fee. So this is modified from the current policy where it says something specifically about a janitorial fee. This is trying to roll two things into one, which might be too much. This is after hours usage period. So somebody calls Camille and they say, I want to use the room on Sunday from noon to 5 for this event. And for some reason, we agree to do that. And that's one use. The other use has to do with facilities that have access to their meeting rooms and their doors because they have separate entrances and keys to them. So not all of our facilities can offer that. And it's an attempt to roll both into one thing, basically saying like, hey, you better talk to us first. We're not going to sign up for meeting room use without you having a conversation with the library director or their designee, which is going to be the branch manager. Does that make sense?
So at this point, I could do a meeting at Green, which does not have a separate entrance. And somehow there wouldn't be anybody watching and making certain I'm locking up. There's no.
No, that's what we would probably tell you. There has to be staff there and you have to pay for the staff's time. And then it would be a matter of, can you find a staff member that wants to work on Sunday from 1 to 5 to help Martha get into the room? And you might run into some trouble there.
No.
We used to have the example we've been using is that when Chris and I first started at JMRL, there was a religious organization in Charlottesville that had this arrangement with the central library, and they had some sort of meeting on Sunday mornings, and there was a library staff member that was there that they paid the staff time up in order to let them into the building and let them out and to clean up the room.
We also did that with Tom a couple times where they paid staff member to be there.
They paid for.
So because they wanted restroom access.
Yeah.
They were having.
So this leaves us a little bit of room to allow for that in circumstances where it benefits them. Activities and events are not subject to the guidelines of this policy, so that's just,
Wait.
Yeah.
But you also say it has to be a staff member there. If a person who's not a staff member wants to use this, then there has to be a staff.
yeah, we would say that.
So I would think in that
I think that falls under the special arrangements.
Okay.
You know, it would need, basically, we're not gonna put an advertisement out here saying these rooms are available to rent after hours. It would have to be a one-on-one scenario in which the branch manager and the library director thought it made sense for the community. Yeah, are you happy with that?
Is there an application for that?
I don't believe there is. Get some contact.
So if I'm reading through this, how do I know where to go? Contact JMRL.
Yeah, I think you would contact the branch that you wanted to use and work
This
it
is-
out.
Right, this is mostly, I think,
We don't
a
want
place
to
to
add.
point to after the fact. This is not a service that we offer. But as we just said, like it has come up in the past and we do have branches that have exterior rooms that we need to account for one way or the other. I'll put a pin in this though. Maybe this needs a little bit of thought.
With those extra rooms, does a staff member have to be there?
We haven't traditionally.
And how does that public member get in and out?
Somebody checks out the key. from the
Make
library.
arrangements, yeah. Louisa's the best example because their room is out in the lobby. You know, it's not in the library itself, so.
But then we also had an issue out there.
Yeah.
Because there was a group using it that then violated library policy. They
About
weren't
public.
allowing public use. They weren't allowing other people into the room. So we talked to the organizers and let them know that they were violating policy. They couldn't continue to do that. And they understood that, but they viewed it as a different thing. So we'll go back and look at this.
Yeah.
sentence.
And also keys. I know in certain situations, keys get duplicated.
Yeah, that could be a concern. And also, in each of these circumstances, JMRL doesn't own the facilities, so we need to make sure we have the support of the jurisdiction. Right.
If they're building.
Okay, so we didn't, Mike, are you still there?
I am still here, although it took me a moment to find my mute button.
So I think we have to wrap up for today. We didn't actually get to signage, but I think there's enough here that we could potentially have a first reading of this ready after our next meeting and do an in-depth look at signage in August. Does that sound good?
It does, but if I can have 2 minutes to intro what I see about signage, I think it's very procedural right now.
Okay.
So I'd like to, for the next step, for the committee to just come up with some bullet points of what we want to communicate to staff about guidelines about what is an appropriate sign for the library or what's the purposes of signages in the library. And then secondly, and then for the public to know what to expect with signs in the library. And I think that's probably a fairly short bullet list. So I would, maybe we can by email ask for some contributions to that and have a starting point right at the next meeting in 2 months.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much.
You want to adjourn us?
I think Martha's in. Well, I guess I'm an official member now. So sure. This meeting of the policy committee is adjourned.
Thank you.